Am I frozen?
You are. You are frozen, brother. You stopped moving.
That's strange. Come on. What's going on, guys? This is Filmington. With me, I've got good friend Dennis DPZ. We've done a few collaborations on Sports Card Dad's channel, the DPZ Collector Series. He's been nice enough to have me on as a guest. So we figured we got along. Why not try to do something, put it on my channel, and see if we can do some sort of a weekly format on the Filmington channel and make it oriented around baseball. What's going on, Dennis? How you doing? How's your week been?
I'm good, my friend. I am good. This is exciting. We were talking before we kicked off the show here. Your episodes have performed the best of all my Collector Series episodes, so I felt it was fitting that we should try to maybe capture some of that magic, see if there's something there. So I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, and it's funny because the episode that performed the best, it was really long. YouTube algorithm tells you not to make videos longer than an hour. Really keep it under 20 minutes if you can. Yeah. And we had some technical issues at the end where my camera literally died. And it might during this episode too. So if my camera switches, that's because I'm an idiot and I don't have a charger long enough where it's connected to an extension cord and it might not be good enough. So yeah, my week's been terrible, man. Do you want to hear a story?
Let's hear
it. Yesterday, maybe I can actually pull it up and show it for the audience if I can edit it in. It was 88 degrees in my house. On the floor I was working in, because I work from home, it was 88 degrees at like 3 o'clock.
Wow.
And it's because it's been 90 plus 3 days in a row in the Boston area. And our air conditioner died a week and a half ago. And we've been trying to get contractors to come and help. But because we live in this like weird town on like this different electrical provider, we're not really covered by the same rebates. So like the contractors don't even want to work with us, because it's just a pain in the ass to go through. It's like so much more red tape. And it's like, oh, there's these audits afterwards and before the government got involved. And so instead of focusing on my town, they work on other towns where they can like price gouge them because they're getting all this like subsidized equipment. And, oh, you want this $50,000 thing, you know, that ordinarily would have cost like $10,000 to fix. But yeah, you get all your vents replaced, your ducts. You can get this ductless system. You can get 5 zones. You can get a heat pump here. You can get, you know, a baseboard down here to give you some supplementary heat. So people are getting these ridiculous jobs to have access to all this like extra money and loans, and I don't, and they're just ignoring me. And on top of that, there's like 5 or 6 ways that I can fix this one little problem. So I'm trying to do my own research, talk to people that live in New England that have had this issue. So yeah, it's been a pain, and it's been really hot, and I started to lose my mind yesterday and say things that I probably wouldn't have ordinarily said. People I work with, family members, had to like put my dad on mute through Facebook Messenger. It's been a rough few days, but today one of the last contractors put in some like special fixes to replace the capacitor or something, and like the broken, what we thought was a broken air conditioning condenser now works. You guys have AC in Seattle area?
Yeah, I have a heat pump. We never used to need it, but it gets warmer now. We get a stretch during the summer. We get a couple months where it's really hot, and yeah, so we need it. I couldn't imagine being, you know, I like it cooler anyway. I'm a 70-degree guy in the house type person. So, you know, when it creeps up there, it's not comfortable for me. But I can't imagine 88 degrees and trying to focus. I don't know how you do that. I couldn't imagine trying to deal with that.
It sucks. Yeah, they say you need like 3 quotes to compare them all together. But if they're not apples to apples quotes, if you get one guy that says you need a solar panel, another guy that's trying to sell you on a heat pump, another guy that's selling you ductless, and you start to like lose track of like what the quotes even account for. And if they've actually put all of those details into the quote, because if one looks really low, then it's like, maybe he's missing something that somebody else did put in theirs. And
you gotta save the trees, bro.
I guess, you know, I'm hoping part of this is it wouldn't be so complicated, but then we have oil heat here. And with that comes rebates, which I don't really get much of, as I was saying, but I could potentially still get some for getting off of oil heat, but it's not really enough. So I have to, I guess, like, it's almost like a market prediction. Like, will the rebates be more or less to get people off oil and to stack the electrical grid more and more? Because you could see arguments either way. And I think in California, maybe in anywhere you are too, they've backed away from like credits for like solar and maybe even like the heat pumps, because just there's less room on the grid for some of these things. We can cut most of this out, by the way.
We're gonna talk about heating and air conditioning for 10 minutes. This is our new show. We're gonna talk about the most random stuff ever. But hey, baseball.
Yeah, baseball. Jordan Lawlar called up today. First game today.
There you go, man. So what do you think of Jordan? I mean, I was just looking at his market here before we jumped on, because you're like, hey, this guy, starting slower. Does that help you from an entry point standpoint? What are your thoughts on him?
The refractor Bowman Chrome Auto from 21 Bowman Draft. This might not be able to see it that well, but
yeah,
if you can get a PSA 10, those are low pop. Every once in a while, you stumble upon guys with the 499 refractors in PSA 10s, where the pops, like with J-Rod, it's closer to 100. With Wander, it's closer to 30. So there's like certain players, Corbin Carroll's closer to 30, where it's just a harder card to gem. And Jordan Lawlar is one of those. So in a PSA 10, I would pay that like 2.5x multiplier on the 9. I'm trying to sell my 9 actually right now. But regarding the player, I've liked him for a while. He has a lot of tools. He didn't really show too much power up till this year, which I think is normal. Like in like prospecting, a lot of the times it takes a little bit longer for middle infielders to show that. I think the key with them is ground ball, fly ball ratios, just to make sure they don't have like extreme tendencies on the ground ball side. Decent defender, could work on the range. He's got some speed. He's got a good eye. So even earlier this year when he was struggling, he had a slow first half, kind of like what Dominguez had. But he did have solid walk rates, K rates, which is the first thing that I look at for minor leaguer. 20% for Lawlar. And now he's taken his like his slash line where it started. He was like batting 200, and he got that up to like, I don't know, close to like an 800 to 900 OPS, like 280 batting average at time of promotion. So I think he's ready. This is a guy that a lot of people before the season started expected to perhaps get a look in August or September. And it's nice to see not just Lawlar. Before we went live, we're talking about Noelvi Marte, Ronnie Mauricio.
Yeah.
I think either today or yesterday, Evan Carter of the Rangers, outfield prospect, got called up, another like top 20, 25 guy. So yeah, with Lawlar, he's one of the few guys, I think. Now he was like still is a top 10 prospect. It's hard for those guys to retain value after they've been called up, even if it is somewhat of a surprise. But he's the type of guy, I think the performance will be strong enough, and his prices at the call up, as you said, like weren't incredibly outrageous. Like I think a PSA 9 refractor is like $350. I think he might be able to hold those values if he does what I think he's capable of. Will he go up? Is there room to buy this guy now? Probably not. But he's a guy I would definitely look into. I think that the strategy would be, if he starts off slow, if the hype wears off, which it often does, it did with his teammate Corbin Carroll last year, even though he performed pretty well, people were like, oh, okay, we know what he is. We know what he looks like. Probably people weren't impressed with his physique. He doesn't have that like intimidating, wiry frame with the fast twitch muscles of Ellie De La Cruz. He doesn't have like the buttocks and the thighs of Jasson Dominguez. And when he hits the ball, it's not as loud. So there's a good chance Lawlar might be overlooked a bit in the offseason, and maybe that's a time to buy into him.
I think what you like to look at too is with some of these players, if they're going to sustain at the next level, what do they do when they're down? Like when they're not hitting the ball, when they're slumping, because there's the peaks and valleys of hitting. And obviously we get excited about that. And that's what gets the highlights. But how do they contribute to the team when they're not hitting the ball as much? Or say if they got a high walk rate, they're getting on base, are they stealing bags? Are they advancing the game for the team? Are they great defensively?
Mm-hmm.
They have their good instincts, good IQ, good baseball IQ, where they're filling in places that you don't see on the back of the baseball card. Those are things I think matter too with players. The players that do I think retain the value and do well are the players that are the full baseball players, the complete baseball players. Trout was always that guy, right? I think that's where J-Rod really shines. That's where Ellie's shining right now, honestly. He's dangerous everywhere. He's dangerous everywhere on the baseball field, whether he's running, whether he's hitting, whether he's fielding, he's dangerous and he can affect the game. I think those are the kind of players that you hope to get, because those are the ones I think that will shine the longest and give you that opportunity. We talk about Shohei being like transcendent. That's a whole different conversation, but I do think that in order to justify the hype and the price points that some of these prospects carry, they're going to need to do that. We have a very small sample size of Jasson Dominguez. What are your thoughts on him so far? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, first of all, Ellie has not been as good over the last couple months. So at this point, he's dangerous to his team. I think in one of the episodes, you had asked me like which young player was I most excited about, and I think of the sample that we had picked, I said Ellie. Didn't mean that I was going to buy him at those prices. Didn't mean that I had anything invested into him at the old prices. I didn't. I thought it was a little too risky. And strikeout rate, high ground ball rate, looks a little overmatched, as baseball is a tough sport. So if you had asked me the same question today, I would probably not pick Ellie. I'd pick somebody else. But Jasson Dominguez, so he's got 3 home runs, and I think either 5 or 6 games, batting .300. 3 strikeouts to no walks, small sample, no reason to get, super obsessed with the 0 walk number at this point, but that's something I'd look into after the first week and a half, 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, he looks the part, and like the small stints that I've seen of him in, spring training, he just looked like an absolute beast. So it's weird going back to like, sometimes it takes a little bit longer for guys to just show their power in games. With Dominguez, he clearly always had the raw power. But then you look at his minor league track record, you don't really see a whole lot of that. Like the ISO, which is a measure of isolated power, slugging percentage minus batting average. You look at just the home run numbers. He's a guy that also tends, over the last couple years at least, he's tended to start off really slow, look overmatched. And then he really turns it on, and then you look at the full body of work and like, oh, it's pretty good. With Dominguez, he's got like a strange physique, right? Like, I don't think he's much more than like 5'9", but like you look at pictures of him, if he's not standing next to anybody else, you'd assume he was like 6'4", like Mike Trout's build, right? Like he looks like physically imposing. But he clearly has a good baseball body for power, makes the most out of that build as well. It's interesting. If you look at this year, even last year, like he's had a lot of speed in the minor leagues. So he hasn't stolen a base yet, I don't believe. Is that going to translate? Because that tends to be one of the things that isn't quite one for one. Guy that steals a lot in the minor leagues, they come up and it's like team tendencies, or just it's easier to steal bases in the minors, or maybe they just want to preserve your health. If it's still early, I would say that I don't care, because I don't like the Yankees and I'm not invested in his cards anymore. Over the last week, I did sell I had a Bowman Chrome Auto Green. But I also still have a lot of 2020 Bowman Wax, which would have Bobby Witt Jr., Volpe, and Dominguez.
Right. Whatever happened to Robert Paulson? He just dropped off the face of the earth. He was a guy for a minute, but he died. Where did he go?
Yeah, man. Like, I somehow broke even on the few Bowman Chrome autos I had, because I picked up the green color matches, and I picked up 3 greens, 2 ended up gemming. And this is before the market collapsed. Like the player was collapsing, but the market hadn't yet fallen. So I was able to actually make a little bit of money on Paulson. I don't know how, because like right after I bought him, it was like, oh my God, this guy's striking out like 65% of the time. He was supposed to be a toolsy guy, like Ellie, right? Like can contribute in a lot of different ways, but he's just, he's very raw. There's these, the international guys. I mean, they just flame out much harder and much faster. And it has to do with the level of competition. It has to do with limited book, limited preparation, younger ages. Complex league doesn't really matter much until they play stateside. Like what they've shown, really just take it with a grain of salt. And speaking of Bowman Chrome, that's coming out soon, and that is very relevant for that product, the international hype and all those players.
Yeah, speaking of toolsy athletes, Lazaro Montez is a guy I have my eye on. Being a Mariner fan, willing to take more of a leap with a guy like that. I picked up a couple of his blues, and Michael Aurora as well. Is a Colombian infielder. He's got a lot of hype. I took a flyer on him based off a very reputable Bowman Chrome guy. Giving me kind of the nod on that. But I think those are easy because they're Mariners. But again, they can get traded at any given time. Who knows? But you do take that risk with a player like that. It is a high risk, high reward type of venture when you look at some of these international prospects. But man, there could be so much there, and that's the Adley Rushmans and all these guys coming through the college ranks are just not as attractive. I don't know what it is. You need to get excited about the international. Is there anybody internationally right now that you're like, hey, people aren't talking about this guy, but this is a great organization. They know how to develop players, a little less risk. Anybody that comes to mind for you other than the guys that are just now getting called up? Anybody young that's just, maybe there's an opportunity coming up in a new product, or maybe in 2023 Bowman that, folks out there should be thinking about?
Yeah. So I don't really do like the whole like diamond in the rough thing, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are doing that better than I can do it, with time, with access to information, with access to real scouts. And I think the fact that a lot of people think that they can outsmart everybody else, that leads to irrational prices across the board. So Wander Franco, somebody in a Facebook chat I'm in, made a comment about like his blue Bowman Chrome autograph that just sold for like $300. And they said, like, imagine if he's vindicated, like how cheap this will end up being. And then I'm looking at the price that it sold for, and I'm like, okay, so right now it's selling for what top prospects sold for in 2008. So it's like a time, yes, the market was smaller. Yes, there's been some inflation since then, but I feel like there's a lot of opportunism in the speculating game with Bowman Chrome autograph, and it's taken away like the inefficiencies to a point. So instead of me trying to outsmart everybody else on identifying talent, what I do is I focus on guys that are already in the top 20. That's why I have the Lawlar cards here. Jackson Holiday has been a guy I've been on for 4 or 5 months. And I'm just trying to predict the next big thing. So before, yes, the performance has to go in my favor for the short term while I'm holding the cards. But before this guy makes his splash in the majors, the idea is that I empty out at a point where hype is completely maximized on that player. Now, for Jackson Holiday, for him to go up in value, a guy that's already priced just about higher than any other prospect towards the beginning of this year, I'm making a bet that he's going to be the number one guy, the number one prospect, that he's actually going to separate himself from the pack, from Jackson Chourio. He's separated himself from Jackson Chourio. And then I feel like behind Chourio, in my opinion, there's another wide gap. So I feel like that's gone pretty well. And there's probably still some room for additional upside unless he gets called up in September and then the hype bubble pops before I'm able to exit, which happened with Carroll. I decided to hold, and I'm like, all right, if I'm going to make money on Corbin Carroll, it's going to be based off his major league performance now. Fortunately, I bought him because I think that he's got the tools to be able to translate. If anybody can, it's going to be hard, but he has a good shot, and it worked out. With Holiday, it'll be a similar thing. If he gets called up, I'll probably be like, oh, damn it. Now, instead of me selling in January or February, when like that prospect bubble is the highest, maybe even March, I'll have to wait till like April or May or June, July. He's got to establish himself. He's got to separate himself from not just the rest of the prospects, but now the rest of the other young, talented players in the league as well. So I guess a long way of answering. Yeah, not really. I set up at shows once a month, and if certain guys come across, I'll maybe research them, and If it's a good buy, I'll buy it, but I won't specifically be looking for certain players that are like outside the top 20 or 50.
20 or 50, that's kind of your okay. You think Wander's goose is cooked? You think he's just, I mean, I heard there's a third potential person. It's getting pretty dicey.
Yeah. So at this point, like, it's all about expected value, right? What's the percentage that he's vindicated? And not just that, but what's the percentage? Where do his values return to if he's vindicated? What are the chances that his stuff could grow 2x from where it's at today within the next 5 to 10 years, even if he was vindicated? So the value proposition is small for him. So I have got a bunch of Wander stuff. I've got a bunch of 2019 Bowman stuff. And with Wander, it's been frustrating, Dennis, because I wanted to sell more of his stuff earlier. I actually made a video at the National, and I'm like, Wander is overpriced at today's prices, even though he's down. This is before all this, the news came out. I couldn't sell his stuff because it kept on getting shilled in auction, whether I was trying to sell it, whether I had PC Sports Cards try to sell it. If you send stuff to PC Sports Cards, he'll relist it maybe 2 to 4 weeks after, like non-payment, like after that first auction ends. Right. So it's extremely frustrating. Not much you can do about it unless you start to like undercut with bins, which I should have done. That would have been my way around it. Take the cards back, and I still had a few of them in my possession. I should have just like put them up at like reasonably priced bins. Obviously, you're not going to get shillers that, well, usually, especially now when you have to like pay automatically upon the acceptance in some cases. I guess it wouldn't really apply at higher dollar amounts probably, but so I sold most of my Wander stuff for pennies. I was super busy like a week after it happened, so that cost me even more. And I've got exposure to 2019 wax, so I'm praying for J-Rod now more than ever that he can carry that, because like based on, I've tried to get out in front of the wax falling. I think we've talked about this before. Wax tends to react a little bit later than the singles. Could be like a few month lag maybe. So I'm trying to take advantage of like, the more recent wax prices, and I'm trying to undercut those and sell blasters and hobby boxes and retail boxes, because like 2020 Bowman baseball that has Witt, Volpe, and Dominguez. 2019 Bowman baseball wasn't printed as much, but basically it just says J-Rod, and you like Mauricio, but he's smaller component of that, so it's basically just J-Rod. Wanders in that. Marco Luciano's market's dead. So like, which one of those should be more expensive? Like, in my opinion, that gap should be like closed, because right now 2019 Bowman baseball still outsells it by like 30%. So either 2020 Bowman baseball needs to come up, or 2019 Bowman baseball needs to come down, or maybe a little bit of both. It's probably going to be a little bit of both. So I've got mega boxes, blasters, pretty much every configuration you could think of.
But it's interesting though, because like you can get a player like, say, Ronnie comes and just becomes that guy. Now you have J-Rod and you have Ronnie that are because Wander's obviously done, and they're carrying the product for you. You got two perennial all-stars that it could happen. It definitely can happen. It's not impossible for that to happen. I mean, J-Rod's showing it. Maybe Ronnie's obviously still a wild card, but what if he does?
Yeah.
That changed the game for you on that 2019 product?
The issue is, and you've probably seen this, if you don't start out as like a top 10 prospect, it's hard to ever grab like a whole lot of fanfare with your cards. Like, it's an uphill battle to convince people that, look at me, like Juan Soto, look at me. I wasn't a top 10 guy, but like, I'm just as good as the other guys. Like, you've got to really show it over the course of a few years. That gives the guys like Wander, Vlad, Ali Rushman, like a little more like leeway too, with like their markets cratering. Like, I don't know if you've seen, but like Bowman Chrome autographs can stay like high for longer than usual. Like Spencer Torkelson was the number 1 overall draft pick, and his stuff, like, it took like a complete year of him sucking till like people to start actually selling those cards. Like, I was looking at Card Ladder, and like, I'm like, nobody's like listed a Spencer Torkelson autograph in months, like 3 to 4 months. It's like, so like it looks like his other stuff has fallen, and that hasn't. So what I'm trying to get to is not really the the brand, but the player. They, I guess there's like deep pockets that hold these cards of these top prospects, specifically Bowman Chrome autographs. And I don't know. It's like the market has already bought into them being potentially a phenom, and they know that they don't need to convince other people of that, even if the guy had an off year. It's like, well, Vlad, best hit tool in 15 years, top prospect. He's going to be a stud versus a guy like, I don't know, what's another example? Like Michael Harris, just like kind of comes out of nowhere and people like forget about him right away. Now that he's back hitting 300, his overall season won't look too different from last year. It probably won't go 2020, but
you got to be really excited. You got to be like the potential 40-40 player. You've got to be
right.
Yeah, you got to be pretty special to overcome the fact that you didn't start. It's like racing. You didn't start in the pole position. You didn't start in the top 10. You're going to have to really work hard to win the hearts and minds of collectors that want to spend money on that product. I get it. Okay. That's a really good point. I never thought about that. I mean, you think about trying to pick that guy because that's the interesting topic, because some people talk about product from back, in 16 and 17, and well, these were the guys in those years. Well, obviously they didn't pan out, right? Or maybe they did for a while and won an MVP, a Rookie of the Year, who knows, but they just haven't put it all together. But then you have a player that has been just amazing, and we didn't expect them to be, but their card prices don't reflect that. Maybe that's why. So,
yeah, it's a little bit of a factor. I mean, Kevin Maton, you can still go to zero if you're a top prospect. It's just you're a little more disadvantaged if you weren't a top prospect in being able to be valued the same as a guy that was.
Interesting. I just had a video with a friend of mine that put something out that he was just, just really frustrated with the Topps product itself, Chrome and just the paper and everything, just nothing exciting. What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think is it overprinting going to be an issue? Is that going to be something with Fanatics moving in? And is the market shrunk enough to where that's going to start really hurting the hobby space for that market for Topps?
Well, I look at Bowman Chrome, and Bowman Chrome slated to come out next week. I guess we'll probably upload this on Saturday the 9th.
Right.
And I see Fanatics is doing a pretty good job in jacking up prices on people and people paying them, whether you want to call it more demand or their pricing strategy working out. We've talked about this a little bit before, like the whole idea that taking out the middleman was going to make things cheaper for the end consumer. It's proving again to be false. I first noticed it with Topps Finest. It was like one of the first products where they implemented their new policies for shops they sold direct to, which will be interesting, by the way, because I think that some of these like policies where shops that buy direct from Fanatics that have that direct account where they can't sell to other businesses, I think that might be only within the first 90 days after the product releases. And if that's the case, then we'll see what happens to Topps Chrome in a month when that 90-day window, or is it 2 months, when that 90-day window is over. But with Bowman Chrome, I'm comparing it to last year, 132 autograph subjects, I think, versus last year was like 112. So it went up like, a little less than 20%. Still quite a bit. With any Bowman major release that has over 100 autograph subjects, it's kind of a lot, kind of too much. Turns a lot of people off. So that doesn't mean that print run went up 20% or that the number of boxes created up when it went up 20%. They've got the HTA format, so theoretically they can create more like boxes without increasing print run of base, if that makes sense, because the HTA doesn't have any base cards in it.
Right.
But generally it's like a ballpark. Maybe like last year, I think they increased production about 20%. Autograph subjects maybe went up like 15 or 20%. And then this year it looks like something maybe similar. Again, just a ballpark estimate. Well, the price of 23 Bowman is, now it's close to like $290, $300 a box. Last year, I think it came out around $270 for a Bowman Chrome hobby box, 2 autographs. Last year we had Chorio, an autograph, not the base card. And we had like a pretty decent checklist outside of that. and also from a rookie card perspective, it was more solid at the time. J-Rod was hot. Wander was injured. Bobby Witt was hot. So I look at that product, printed less, better checklist, in my opinion, for autograph names, fewer autograph subjects. This year, we've got Ethan Salas, who was like a guy that I think 65, 35, like people kind of expected him to be in. As soon as that was announced, I think that was 2 days ago, like September 5th. I bought a case at 270 just because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get it cheaper than that. So 270 times 12 or 275 times 12. I think it was just 3,300 for the case. Since then, the price has gone up with the Ethan Salas inclusion, top 10 prospect, 17-year-old. And it's like he just turned 17 in June. He was born in 2006, this kid. Venezuelan catcher, Padres, like, I don't know. He showed a little bit. Now he's injured for the rest of the year, which is only like 3 weeks. But it's, I don't know, man. Like if you're an investor in the product, or if you're like opening the product, or if you're investing in the singles, it's probably a different perspective based on like overprinting and how that affects you. With me, like as a buyer of singles, it makes me want to stay away from like the manufactured parallels and stuff. As an investor in singles, it makes me want to stay away from base cards, increasing base print runs. It makes me want to stay away from base autographs, increasing base autograph production. As an investor in the wax, I have to be very careful because now Fanatics has more control over the initial prices, over the prices for the first 3 months. Now I can't get it from the same places I could before, which was from other businesses that were offloading stuff just because they got a whole lot of cases. So now I'm paying prices closer to what the end consumer pays. So as an investor, I have to be more careful. But if there's more demand at the end of the day and people are opening it and people are buying it and people are willing to hold it at today's prices, then it's sort of all relative. And that could be good for some of the stuff that comes out this year and for previous years worth of stuff. So Topps Cosmic Chrome, that came out a few weeks ago. And I think people said that they printed 3 times as much as last year. 3 times. That's like a Panini jump. But that was also a product that they piloted 1 year, probably created a little bit of, but we'll see if it sticks. Oh, wow. This exceeded all expectations. So now let's get the supply right. Now let's try to match demand. Next year, they're not going to 3X it again. But this year, you have to pay $350 for a box right now. Last year, you could have got it at release. Okay, people, there was a price discovery process, took like a month and a half, 2 months for people to realize like this is probably worth closer to $400. So $400 versus $350. $400, in my opinion, superior checklist at the time before Wander did his thing, or people found out about it, versus this year, you're paying $50 more for a product that was printed 33% as much. Like, so what I'm doing now is I'm doing the arbitrage game where I'm going back and I'm buying last year's 22 Cosmic Chrome. Actually, I have a snipe set up for tonight. It's probably already run. Maybe I lost, but I'm trying to pay $450 for those boxes. So I think those are a steal compared to people paying $350 for this year's boxes. We'll see if it works. I don't know. Nothing's risk-free. And I'm looking to do something eventually with Topps logo fractor. Maybe if it ends up being a similar thing. That product was allegedly released like a week and a half ago. It was found in like the New York City store. I know you're a fan of the product, or at least the J-Rod. And I'll be trying to see, like, once I can get a feel of supply, is there an arbitrage opportunity there? I don't know. Some of this depends on like long-term value of the set. Like, are they going to continue to make it? Are they going to destroy the set by just like overprinting the base cards? Because that could affect the investment viewpoint. If they're 3Xing, like, that's a big deal actually.
Well, if it goes, I mean, that's if this year. What does it do to the like Top Cosmics, what 2022 for these, like, or Gilded, or all these like these sets that just come out the first year when there's less printed? Maybe there's a really good place like Julio. This is the example of Julio. Does the fact that Logo Fractor if it becomes, of course I've already sold it, so the skin's not in it anymore, but if it's overprinted in 2023 and then 2024, and then maybe it just drops out because demand goes away, what's that do to that first year? It becomes a
Yeah,
lot.
I mean, it can't be good. It can't be good for the base cards too, and it's something with Sapphire, and it's why I've sort of soured on even some of the older Sapphire cards like the Acuna, which is a shame because it's a beautiful card from 2018 with the Otani. Um, it's it makes people confused and kind of forget how short printed base cards were, how fewer they made when they started making the product. I'm betting that there'll be some sort of negative effect on like some of the older years worth of products, but I'm still a buyer for 2018 Sapphire Wax. It's got a really nice short printed Otani autograph in there, batting pose, follow through. So it's not completely black and white for me, but and one of the nice things about Sapphire was it took them multiple years before they started creating more than 2,000 versions of all the base cards. Never mind like the non-short printed stuff that
Right.
was printed over 2,000 already from Logo Fractor last year. And what's that going to be in 3 to 4 years?
So all points it back to the Bowman Chrome first. I mean, it's just so simple. It's so easy to follow. It hasn't really changed much. True colors. It's really hard to go wrong there. It just really is, especially as the product changes, the print runs change every year. You get overproduction, you get too many products. I don't know. I feel like it just keeps pointing everybody back to both Bowman Chromes. I mean,
and at least at that point, you'll probably still lose money, but it'll be because you picked the wrong player,
right?
And it won't be because you picked the wrong card,
right? Because I want to get back into Julio, and if and when I am able to do it, I want to get probably a blue auto. I don't even have to have a 10. I mean, 9's fine. I just want to get back into something like that. I mean, the Logo Fractor was a cool card, but it's like, I don't know if I want to have too much money tied up in a card like this when who knows what's going to happen to that product. I mean, Bowman Chrome was tried and true. I think a lot of folks feel that way. And, I know Scotty B, really great channel. He's walked through that Topps versus he's a big Topps guy. Obviously he's walked through the Topps Bowman Chrome argument. You and I have talked about it. I mean, everybody's talked about it. It just seems like you hang your hat there. I mean, from a wax standpoint, I picked up a couple off Topps.com, and it's 2 per family, right? 2 per household. How do you get more? What do you do to get more of that product?
Oh,
maybe I'm super naive.
Well,
but
no. This year it's hard. This year, the places to pre-order stuff, they're limited, and you used to be able to pre-order stuff 6 months in advance from like a Blowout or another like larger online retailer. Now, sometimes it's not available till like 1 month out. The quantities are limited because a lot of these online retailers are getting cut off, and in part of that is that they're changing their distribution, right? And then not as much is going to middlemen. So like before, Blowout would have like probably 5 or 6 sources, maybe, I don't know, 30 to buy from. Now they've got very, very few. There's like no distributors, right? It's just really through Fanatics. So you're dealing with that, and you're also dealing with Fanatics selling more direct. I think we've seen some releases. Maybe Topps Finest was part of that, where like a large share was just sold directly through the website, which is
which is crazy. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around that. You're obviously disrupting the infrastructure that was already in place, and people can say that was good or bad. Everybody's got an argument there, but let's just talk about it. Okay, I go to buy it. I'll buy 2. Okay. But unless you're creating all these separate profiles, how do you, if you want to actually move the product later, or if you just want to buy a bunch of it to rip it, who knows? Rip it, sell it later. Who cares?
Yeah.
Invest in it, whatever. You're limited. So what's that do to the sales? I mean, if you can't, and it's hard to go around to like a Steel City or a David Adams or whatever and be able to like put together the quantity you normally would have gotten. I mean, I guess you go on eBay, but you can't go on eBay for 90 days. What you're telling me? So
there's not going to be as much on eBay from those businesses that have the direct accounts with Fanatics within those like 90 days, or maybe it's longer. And there's different policies for like online retailers that buy from them versus shops versus breakers. Right. There's like different policies and rules. Like I'm just more talking about the brick and mortar shops, which also tend to have an online presence.
Yeah,
I don't think they can sell on eBay because it's to an end consumer. at the end of the day. Actually, no. These rules are you have to sell this product, this portion at least that we're giving you for you as a brick and mortar shop. You have to sell it in your store or break it according to our guidelines.
Crazy. Wow.
So,
I mean,
you can still at the end of the day, you can still get it. It's just there's fewer places to look because of that, less competition, less leverage as a buyer, and you're not going to be able to be super flexible about when you enter or what you pay. You're dealing with like prices that are within this range, sellers that are in this like band of sellers, and timing would be like within this time period of release date minus 5 days in a lot of cases, or after release, it's fine. Then you can find it. And then it's how much is Fanatics holding back to make it look like supply is lower than it is. So you have to deal with that as well. You already had to deal with that a bit with, when the blowouts and DA car worlds were kind of doing a good job setting prices and colluding. They were holding product back. Now it's more Fanatics. So at least they have a better understanding. At least now the manufacturer has a better understanding of like true demand for the product, where the product is, how much people need versus what they have. So I guess there are some benefits to that system. And with that, ensuring, you can better ensure that you don't flood the market. But again, this all points to just higher prices for the end buyer.
Well, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was going to say. Like that just basically gouges the buyer, because they're going to have to, if you time it, then you're going to assume it's always coming at that frequency, or there's only so much of it, you're going to spend accordingly. But then if it changes radically down the road, I mean, then obviously the market's going to get affected. Product's going to go down in price, and that whole intangible, that whole variable to me invites a whole different risk now in prospecting. It's just a whole other one, I mean,
it does. Yeah.
It does.
Long-term holding, especially, but
wax for sure.
or just singles, like it, everybody says like, oh, I don't care about all the graded cards that are coming out into circulation because I'm not going to be the one that's holding it at the end of the day. I'm going to sell it. But like, if everybody has a 3-month time horizon and you have a 6-month time horizon, but you don't think you're the bag holder, then who's the bag holder? You are. You're going to end up with that, dealing with that like price destruction of those. You got like 85 of these graded. They came back 9s and 10s. Granted, there's not as many people doing that these days. Maybe the 85 copies turns into 3 or 4 copies of these cards that instead of base, they're just refractor, non-numbered cards. Well, same thing's going to happen to you at the end of the day. And overprinting like that will all affect you at some point.
I mean, unless the player pans out and you're in like a true color numbered auto and a high grade. You have to like check a lot of boxes for you to feel safe or safe-ish with any of this. But it's still exciting, and we still do it because it's so fun. Playoff race is here. This is an exciting time for baseball. September is always coming down to the stretch. There's some teams that are going to be trying to make it, some teams that are going to be pushing for it. Who are you liking? Obviously, we've got the AL West is looking really great. It's exciting with Texas and Houston and Seattle coming down to the line there. The AL East is always hot. The Royals look really good. The Tampa Bay Rays going to be all right. There's a lot of places. Is there anywhere you want to talk about?
Yeah, so Baltimore, I saw a stat where like coming into the year, they were like 10% likely to make it to the playoffs, which I actually find a little unusual with the expanded format. Maybe that's an area where I should have made a bet because I didn't feel too strongly about the Red Sox. And that leaves, upwards of 3, even 4 teams in the new format that can make the playoffs, I think, in one division. So, yeah, 88 and 51, just looking at the standings now, won their last 5, differential plus 112. I mean, that could be an exciting young team to watch. They don't have the pitching, though, to really compete, in my opinion, in the playoffs, or at least to go deep. And last year, we saw the teams that didn't have the strong pitching, particularly like the aces up front, at least like healthy ones, be able to kind of outlast the Padres and Phillies in the NLCS. But this year, like the Braves look by far and away the strongest, and that's their overall team. I think the bullpen might be a little weak, but pitching is starting to get healthy. Strider getting close to like that innings limit. I think they wanted him like probably around like an invisible number of like 175-ish. He's already almost there. So like got blown up in his last start. Is he going to be dependable in the playoffs, or is he going to suffer like, another blow up like what happened last year when they got eliminated? I think it was that Rhys Hoskins home run where he did like that fist bump.
Yeah.
So yeah, Braves, I hope take down the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers just suffered an injury. Was it Kershaw again? It was like a key pitcher injury, and they don't have the depth.
And they got Arias, who's had that trouble with the loss. He's out. That's a big. That I was feeling really good about the Dodgers, and they felt good to me. But I'm with you. I think the Braves, they're firing on all cylinders. They got that massive right now. They're at a 14 game lead on the Phillies, and they look strong. I see them representing the National League in the World Series. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think so. And it was funny, like looking at the standings after May, it looked like Tampa Bay was going to run away with the division. Best team in the majors by far, and their offense, just like everybody was hitting, even these no-name guys. Some are still performing really well. Josh Lowe, like guys with clear flaws in their approach, just like exceeding expectations, hitting for power, stealing bases. And they've had some serious pitcher injuries. McClanahan, and then in like April, they lost like two key pieces to season-ending injuries. Springs and Drew Rasmussen. So it's incredible that they're even still like hanging on, in my opinion. But that early lead they built up has helped them to withstand some of these departures, Wander, etc. So, but like a lot of people probably thinking like, well, okay, what does this mean for like baseball cards? And if you haven't heard my stance here, I'll say it again. Playoff spikes tend to be temporary, in my opinion, even if it involves like, one out of whatever it is now, 12 teams, 16 teams in the playoffs wins the World Series. Even if you win a World Series, doesn't matter as much to your resume as it would in other sports, where as a star player, you're just expected to have more influence, more of an impact on a series, on a particular game, and the outcome of that. It would be unusual if the best player on a team had an impact on their team's ability to make it to the next round. Like, say, Mike Trout. Like, Angels, say if they ever won a playoff series, like, the chances that he actually played like a pivotal factor for them to move on, I'm not saying like did something in the game that was meaningful. I mean, like, made a difference of them winning and losing the series, it is smaller than it would be in like basketball with LeBron, Giannis, in football with like Brady with the quarterbacks. So that there are going to be rare situations like with Kershaw. He wins a World Series and he kind of had a chance to rewrite his narrative of choking consistently in the playoffs. So like that could be a little different. Maybe that affects the long-term value. So me, if I hold any of the guys that get spikes, could be performance, it could be related to their team doing well. If there is some sort of a spike, it ends up being short-term. Again, in 99% of cases, I'm going to be selling those guys of, cards I hold. Where I think it could be, where I think there's an exception, is you have players. So say if like the Reds make it to the playoffs, and it probably doesn't look like it at this point, but you have like small market teams with guys that haven't been like seen, recognized, broadcasted nationally. If those players, not their teams, but if the players have like outlier performances, hitting a bunch of home runs, even if it means their team exits after the first round, then I think that can help draw some hype that can last in the offseason into the next season, because people will be remembering kind of that individual player performance, not a team thing. Again, it doesn't really have to do with success. So yes, it's better to be in the playoffs than not, because you can benefit from the exposure, right? National exposure, fewer teams, concentration on fewer teams, and being in more series gives you more opportunities to do that. But if you're not, part of baseball is also the averages. It's not just the counting stats. So if you underperformed in 2 series and did well in one of them, even if you're a star player, like I don't know. It's not quite as clear cut in baseball, and it's not something that I usually like to speculate on. But hey, man, if the Mariners make it, like I'll be watching Julio, I'll be watching his stats, walk-off home runs, like clutch moments, anything. I'll be selling at the chance I get at any of those spikes if they're like meaningful enough, short-term spikes.
Well, you see, like the case of Randy Arozarena. I mean, he had a huge postseason a couple years back, and obviously I think he's parlayed that into a decent career. I mean, he's an all-star and home run derby this year. I believe he was an all-star this year, right? Yeah, he was in the all-star game.
Yeah.
He was an all-star this year.
He was on pace for like one of his best seasons this year. I don't know what he did in the second half, but he's now the leader of the team now that Wander's gone.
Right.
That was a weird. So in 2020, that was a weird situation where literally like he had almost as many playoff at bats as regular season at bats. And he took outlier to another level, his performance. Right. So it probably actually did help his long-term outlook. The guy's like his age, based on likelihood of being a Hall of Famer. Like even today, he probably sells for more than what he would have based on just that memory, that playoff push. And he didn't even win the World Series. It was all based on his individual accomplishments. But that would be a time when I think it would be long-term value affecting.
Definitely. Who do you like in the American League?
American League. To start the season, I like the Jays. Looks like they have a 61% chance of even being in the playoffs. And Alek Manoah has been a waste. Kevin Gausman. Who else do they have for pitchers? Like Ryu, Barrios they have. The offense, I think like Bo Bichette just got injured. Vlad's been pretty bad for his standards all year. Matt Chapman had a great April, and he's done nothing since. George Springer has been he's been okay. He's been George Springer. He stayed healthy at least. And then you've got the Twins. All right, I'm going to skip over the Central. And then the West. Okay, so it's going to be Astros again. The Astros are going to come out based on their experience. They've still got a lot of their core guys intact. Altuve, Bregman. Some of those guys are really clutch. Their pitchers tend to show up in the playoffs as long as they're healthy. McCullers is never healthy, but they've got Framber. They've got Verlander back.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. And I know sometimes Verlander isn't always 100%, but he tends to step up in those big moments anyways in the playoffs. So, Houston, Seattle, Kelnick's not going to be there. And he really hasn't been there since April.
He actually is. They're bringing him back up. They'll bring him back up next week. They're not going to fly him over to Tampa Bay. They're going to wait till they come home. And, he's hitting well in Tacoma in the AAA. He's ahead of schedule. I think he's going to be able to contribute. They're platooning a lot in the corner outfield. So I think that there'll be an opportunity for him to contribute, especially with his bat. So it'll be nice to have that back on the last stretch here. But I'm with you, man. I'm nervous about the Astros. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. And this is a team that knows how to win, and they know how to win in postseason. They know how to win in the stretch, and they know how to they've been so good for so long. I'm surprised about the Rangers. The Rangers are well ahead of schedule. I think that team's going to be good for a little bit. So,
no DeGrom this year, and you thought they're done. Nope. Weren't they leading the division up till a month or two ago?
Yeah, they were right there. They were, and it was sizable.
Seager's been nuts. Seager's missed a lot of time, but he's been so good on a per plate appearance.
And I've got, some major league, I know someone in the league, and, they talk about the swings that those Dodgers, the way they coached up the Dodger hitters in that organization, that they just have huge swings. And that translates, Corey, I knew he wasn't going to miss a beat. I think he's got an amazing, that's a really, really good ball club. And I think they're going to be a threat in the West for a while, but I'm with you. I think Houston's probably going to pull out of it, unfortunately. My heart wants to go with Seattle, but I think we're destined for a wild card. But you know what? There's something else there, though. We play our last – I know Seattle, Texas, and Houston are all playing each other the last 20-some games here, I think. So it's going to be, everybody duking it out. It'll be really, really exciting for the last bit of the last stretch here. It's going to be really fun to watch in the AL West.
You guys might have the best 1 through 3 in Seattle pitchers. So you'll need to ride them like you have all season. The key for you, it's going to be defense. It's going to be clutch hitting. You're going to have the pitching, but can you get the clutch hits? Just like last time, like you got swept last year, right? Like, got to come up big. Like I remember George Kirby had a pretty nice start. Like I think he went like 6 innings, no earned runs. Might do it again. He's a little weird. He gives up a lot of hits, doesn't walk anyone. Gilbert, I like a little bit more, maybe based on his stuff. And obviously Castillo's he's going to finish like second or third in Cy Young, it probably looks like. And then with Texas, like they're toast. So Eovaldi, he was like the guy that's been carrying them or had been carrying them. And at one point he was like a Cy Young candidate. I think he's only pitched over 150 innings like once in his career. So like can't really get much more out of him. And then the rest of their pitching is probably so John Gray. I don't want to say it's trash, but it's probably not incredibly impressive compared to what the other teams in the AL West have that'll be in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be between Houston and Seattle pushing for the AL West crown, and then whoever doesn't get it will likely get I think they'll get a wild card position. So, I just always blows me away. The Twins are always there every year. Like they're always there. They always have that central locked in. I don't know. They never go anywhere, but they
consistent in that regard too, especially when they face the Yankees. Like,
yeah,
just done right away. Just like don't even show up. Just in the 1 year it was frustrating. Because I think 1 year they won like 98 games. They set a record for home runs in a season. I think that year, 2019 maybe, and they were like out of the playoffs so fast.
Just quickly. Yeah, my former boss is from Minnesota, huge Twins fan, and I'm just like, I gotta hand it to you guys. You make the playoffs almost every year. You win your division almost every year. You're like the Buffalo Bills of baseball.
All right, DPZ, thanks for coming on the show, leading the questions, adding some value with your commentary. Appreciate it. We'll do this again. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Thanks for watching, guys.
Take care.